Hey everybody, this is Raymond Camden, API Evangelist for Foxit, and today I'm going to show you an example of using our APIs in a workflow type service. Now, there are a lot of them available out there for people, uh, places like N8N, Microsoft Power Automate, etc. I'm going to show you one that I'm a big fan of, and that's Pipedream. I've been using Pipedream for a few years. It's a really flexible workflow service and kind of great for doing the boring parts of a workflow and then allowing me to work on the more interesting, fun parts. So, to give you an idea of that, I have a Dropbox folder here. It's under a folder called Foxit and it's called Input. I also have one called Output. And I am just going to drag a Microsoft Word document in there. And what's happening now behind the scenes, all automatically, the workflow that I built on Pipedream, it's warming up. It has detected that a file has been added. It's going to grab that file. It's going to call our APIs to convert that Word document to PDF and then save it in the output folder. And in theory, yep, look at that. It's already done. Now, it won't always be instantaneous. The workflow will kick off basically as soon as it can, but it didn't have to do anything. That entire workflow process was just done. So let's take a look at this particular workflow and I will explain the steps that I built to create it. So the first thing you do in a pipe dream workflow is figure out what the trigger is. And that is essentially how the workflow starts. In my case, I have a trigger that says when a new file is added to a folder in Dropbox, start. In Pipedream, I connected my Dropbox account and then I gave it the path, in this case, Foxit, and that is what told it, what folder to monitor. Now, this is going to kick off for any new file. And if you remember, we had an input and output folder. So the next thing I have in my workflow is essentially a filtering condition that basically says if this condition is true, I want to end the workflow. And what I basically did was say, hey, if they are or this workflow is triggered because a new file was added to output, stop. I don't want to recursively keep running the workflow again and again after the result is stored. So this will ensure that only my input files will actually, do a real process. Now, one of the first things I have to do is see if the input is in one of our supported formats. So we support Office, HTML. You can also generate a PDF from a URL, etc. To keep this workflow simple, I'm focusing on Office formats, specifically Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So what I did was basically write a bit of Python code, and I am looking at the trigger, essentially, how did this particular workflow start? And from there, I'm going to grab the extension. Now, later on, I'm going to need to know what API to run. So essentially, I say if it's a Word document, remember the API that I'll need. Same for Excel, same for PowerPoint. And at the end, if for some reason it wasn't one of those extensions, I'm going to end the workflow and like log a message so I know what happened. Now, the next step, I'm going to use some more Python code and download the file that was added to Dropbox to a temporary storage system on Pipedream. In this step, it will do that. And when it's done, I'm returning that particular file path that I just used. Next, I'm going to use Foxit's upload API to take that temporary file I stored on Pipedream and send it to Foxit. Pipedream supports environment variables, so I put my credentials, my client ID and client secret in there, as well as the host for the URL. And that essentially handles sending that binary data to Foxit. Once I have that, I can kick off the job. Now, there's three different endpoints for Word to PDF, Excel to PDF, and PowerPoint to PDF. If you remember back in that extension check step, I returned the API to use while I was validating the extension. So my create conversion job Essentially, I get that URL from that earlier step, and that is what I call when I am working with the Foxit API. So it has the document ID from the upload step previously. It has the API to use from that earlier extension check, and we just kick that off. Now, this will return a job task, a status that we can loop and keep running until it's done or it has an error of some sort. So I have a little simple while loop here. I'm calling the API endpoint to check the status of that conversion job. And then if it's not yet done, I wait 5 seconds. And that was a bit arbitrary. I probably could have done 3 seconds or so, but I definitely want to pause to give the API its time to convert the document. Now, how long the API will take depends on how big and complex your input is. Typically, it's less than 5 seconds, so this runs pretty darn quickly. Now, when it is done, I'm going to once again download that document to temporary storage. This is the converted PDF. And this particular step will return that file name and that path so I know where to get it. And the last step, and this is built into Pipedream, it's essentially just send that value right back up to Dropbox. So this workflow right now is enabled. That's why I was able to just kind of drag that file in and go. And I could let this run forever. And then my users can access this Dropbox folder, put stuff in there, and then get PDFs out. So let me know if you have any questions. Check out our documentation and our forums if you want to talk more about this workflow. And let me know what you think.